Victoria leaned in. Eleanor's perfectly manicured nails tapped softly against the mahogany table. Their husbands wore solemn expressions, but their eyes betrayed a hunger, already calculating the windfalls. To my daughter Victoria, Robert began, reading from the will. I leave the Beacon Hill townhouse, valued at approximately $2.3 million, along with the associated furnishings and my collection of antique jewelry. Victoria's lips curled into a satisfied smile. That townhouse had been in the family for generations. To my daughter Eleanor, I leave the Martha's Vineyard estate, valued at approximately $1.8 million, along with the yacht Serendipity and my art collection. Eleanor's hand found James's under the table. The Vineyard estate was where we'd spent summers as kids. She'd always said she'd raise her family there one day. Robert paused, then looked straight at me. To my daughter Diana. Here it comes, I thought. A charitable remainder trust, maybe a conditional stipend, something humble and condescending. I leave my love, my pride, and my apologies for not understanding sooner what she was truly building. Silence, heavy and instant. That wasn't legal language, that was personal. Victoria blinked. What does that mean? Where's her portion? Robert continued, his tone even. I leave Diana nothing from my estate because she has already surpassed anything I could give her. The documents in her possession will explain everything. All eyes turned to me. I reached into my briefcase and calmly set a thick folder on the table. I was wondering when we'd get to this part, I said softly. Victoria's face tightened. What documents? I opened the folder. Deeds, corporate filings, financial statements, all official, all legally airtight. Well, I said, sliding the first document forward, since we're discussing inheritance, let me show you what I've already inherited. Eleanor grabbed it, skimming fast, her lips parted. This says, you own the Beacon Hill townhouse. I do. Bought it from Dad's estate when he needed cash for his cancer treatment. We kept it quiet, he didn't want to burden you too. Victoria snatched it from her. That's impossible. Mom lived there. We have keys. You have keys because I allowed it, I said, evenly. Check the deed. Diana Matthews, sole owner. I've been your landlord for over a year. Marcus went pale. But, the will. I slid the next document across. Martha's Vineyard estate. Also mine. Acquired 2 years ago when the firm hit a financial crisis. Dad needed help. I had the capital. James stared at the page like it might disappear. But Eleanor was promised that house. She was promised a house I already own. I said, Mom couldn't give away something she didn't possess. Robert's brows rose as he examined the documents. Diana, these are legitimate. When did you? When did I have the money, the knowledge, the ability to do all this without anyone knowing? I opened another folder. Matthews and Associates, our father's firm. 3 years ago. It was circling the drain. I stepped in as a silent investor. I now own 60%. Eleanor's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered. You're a social worker, Victoria said, stunned. You make, what, 40 grand a year? From my non-profit work. Yes, I nodded. But my actual job is running Compass Holdings. It's a private equity firm specializing in distressed asset acquisition. I handed them another document. Last year's revenue, $127 million. My personal net worth, $43 million. As of this morning. The room froze. Victoria's composure cracked. Marcus tugged at his collar. Eleanor looked as if the walls had shifted around her. But how? Victoria whispered. We would have known. You would have known, I said gently, if you'd ever asked, if you'd cared enough to look past your assumptions, but you were always too busy being superior. I pulled out my laptop, opened a presentation. Compass Holdings started with a $50,000 inheritance from Grandma Rose. Remember her? The one you skipped the funeral for because it wasn't exclusive enough. The screen displayed a clean timeline of acquisitions, homes, companies, assets, all bought strategically, quietly, under the radar. While you were buying status, I was earning leverage, MBA at night, licensing exams, building networks, negotiating deals. Robert leaned closer, visibly impressed. You've been quietly holding this family together for years. Dad and I made a deal. I said, I'd protect the legacy while he focused on treatment. He didn't want pity or scandal, so I kept quiet, and he got to preserve his pride. Victoria's voice cracked. But the will, Mother gave us those homes. She tried. I said, but you can't will away something that's no longer yours. I stood, walked to the window. Rain misted against the glass. You see, I learned something from this family. Real wealth isn't about inheritance or appearances. It's about creating value, making hard choices, playing a longer game. Eleanor's voice trembled. So, what happens now? I returned to the table and laid down one last folder. These are lease agreements, fair market rent, standard terms. You can stay in the homes you love, just not as heirs, as tenants. Victoria's jaw clenched. You're evicting us? I'm giving you a choice, I said, stay or go. But either way, the narrative has changed. I met each of their eyes. You spent years defining me by what I wasn't. Turns out, I was the one holding all the cards. The funeral home reeked of lilies and unresolved resentment. I lingered in the corner of the ornate viewing room, watching my sisters, Victoria and Eleanor, hold court like royalty greeting loyal subjects, clad in designer black, flawless makeup untouched by grief. They radiated the same cold superiority that had shaped my entire upbringing. I'm Diana Matthews, though they insisted on calling me Little D well into adulthood. At 34. I was the youngest of three, the one who, according to family lore, inherited none of Dad's business genius or Mom's social finesse. I was the black sheep, the social worker with a battered Subaru and a duplex in the valley, while they sipped champagne in mansions above the clouds. If only they knew what I'd been building in secret. At the center of the room lay our mother's mahogany casket, surrounded by opulent flower arrangements worth more than some people's rent. She died in her sleep at 72. Leaving behind a carefully manicured legacy of charity boards, designer wardrobes, and country club memberships. She also left behind a will, and with it, the truth about how my sisters really saw me. Victoria approached first, her heels echoing sharply on the marble floor. At 38, she wielded her eldest child status like a crown. Her husband Marcus trailed behind, oozing smug entitlement, the embodiment of inherited wealth paired with cultivated arrogance. The viewing ends in an hour, she said coolly. Then we'll go over arrangements. Arrangements. That's what they'd called the will reading for weeks, like divvying up a life was just another bullet point on their agenda. Eleanor arrived moments later, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair unfazed by the summer humidity. At 36, she'd mastered the look of gentle concern layered over ruthless calculation. Her husband James nodded solemnly beside her, likely already crunching numbers on whatever inheritance was coming their way. We've confirmed with Harrison, Blackwell Associates, Eleanor said. The will is being read tomorrow morning. Just family, of course. I gave a silent nod, sipping from a plastic cup of water while they swirled wine in crystal. Even in mourning, the hierarchy remained ironclad. Marcus chimed in, voice thick with patronizing charm. It might be wise to manage expectations about the inheritance. What Marcus means, Victoria added, feigning gentleness, is that Mother valued success and responsibility? Code 4, Diana gets nothing. I'd heard it all before, at family dinners, holidays, every gathering where their lives sparkled with privilege while I shared updates from my nonprofit or passed around homemade cookies. They'd labeled me the bleeding heart who'd never understand money, never matter. And I let them. Because while they flaunted generational wealth and leased new luxury cars every year, I was quietly building something else, something they'd never see coming. The next morning was draped in gray drizzle as we filed into the conference room at Harrison, Blackwell Associates. The firm occupied the top floors of the city's most prestigious tower, polished wood, oil paintings, quiet power in every corner. Robert Harrison himself, now in his mid-60s, sat at the head of the long conference table. He'd been our family's legal shadow since Dad's death 5 years ago. Before him, a neatly stacked set of manila folders. Victoria and Marcus took one side, Eleanor and James took the other. I sat alone at the far end. Like always, the message was clear. Before we begin, Robert said, his voice low and formal, let me offer my condolences. Your mother was an exceptional woman who left behind an extraordinary legacy. A legacy that included 3 luxury properties, an enviable investment portfolio, and the controlling shares in Matthews Associates, the boutique firm our father had built from nothing. Her estate, conservatively, was worth around $15 million. Not billionaire level, but enough to keep my sisters lounging in silk forever. Robert opened the first folder. Your mother's will is quite thorough. She wanted her intentions to be crystal clear. And I smiled, just barely, because I already knew what came next. Marcus's face darkened to a deep plum. You're charging us rent for our own family homes? They're not your family homes, I replied, calm and unshaken. They're mine, but I'm offering fair terms because I still believe in family, even when family didn't believe in me. I opened another folder and slid it across the table. Or, if you prefer, here are purchase agreements. I'll sell the properties back to you at current market value. Beacon Hill is worth $2 million now. Martha's Vineyard, $6 million, plus maintenance and improvements I've personally funded over the years. James was already tapping numbers into his phone, panic sharpening his features. We don't have that kind of liquid capital. I know, I said. That's why the lease option is on the table. Victoria slammed her palm onto the desk. This is extortion. You can't just steal our inheritance. I didn't steal anything, I said. I saved it. When Dad was drowning in medical bills, when Matthews Associates was weeks from collapse, when the entire financial foundation of this family was about to crumble, I stepped in, quietly, effectively, and without asking for praise. I slid over a new stack of documents, bank transfers, wire receipts, renovation expenses, everything itemized. Here's $890,000 for Dad's treatments, expenses insurance didn't cover. Here's $2 million injected into the firm to keep it afloat, and $400,000 in property investments over the last 3 years. Robert, the attorney, looked up from the documents with visible astonishment. Diana, you've been this family's silent guardian. Not silent to Dad, I said softly. He knew. He just didn't want anyone else to know how close we came to losing it all. I looked at my sisters, shock written across their faces, their carefully constructed realities caving in. Here's what I propose, I continued. We move forward honestly. You stay in the homes you love, under lease, or you can buy them back, if and when you're able. Either way, we drop the illusion that nothing ever changed. Eleanor's voice cracked as she wiped at smeared mascara. Why didn't you tell us? Why let us think you were the family failure? Because that illusion made you feel safe. It made you feel superior. And frankly, it gave me room to work without interference. I slid business cards across the table, one for each of them. Diana Matthews, CEO, Compass Holdings. Victoria picked up hers slowly, like it might sting. What now? She asked, quieter than I'd ever heard her. Now, I said, you decide what kind of family we're going to be, one based on honesty or one that keeps pretending. I collected the documents and stood. The lease agreements are valid for 72 hours. After that, I'll need to make other arrangements. As I reached the door, Eleanor called out, voice raw. Diana, wait. I turned. I'm sorry, she said. We were cruel, condescending. You were building something incredible while we were just coasting. Living off inherited wealth and judging the only one actually earning it. I said, not coldly, just truthfully. But that can change, if you want it to. Victoria stood too, hesitant, vulnerable. What would you want from us, if we tried to repair this? I allowed myself a small, genuine smile. Respect, honesty, and maybe, just once, to be invited to Christmas as a sister, not as some charity case. Marcus cleared his throat. And the properties? They're mine, I said firmly, but I'm still offering you homes. Because that's what family should do, even when it's not always what family has done. I left them there, speechless, while Robert began explaining the legal implications they clearly hadn't anticipated. 3 days later, I received 2 signed lease agreements, along with something unexpected, a formal application from Eleanor, requesting a position at Compass Holdings as VP of Property Management. Apparently, she'd spent the weekend reconsidering what she actually wanted to do. Victoria took longer to reach out, but when she did, it was to ask about investment opportunities for her and Marcus. We want to learn, she said. We want to build. not just receive. Family dinners after that were awkward at first, careful, tense, but honest in a way they never had been before. They asked about my work, really asked, and listened when I answered. I asked about their struggles too, the pressure to appear perfect, the fear of not living up to their own image. 6 months later, we gathered around the dining table in the Beacon Hill house, my house, though they lived there now, by lease. I let them decorate it however they wanted. It still felt like home. Eleanor had proven a natural in her new role, increasing Compass Holdings' property portfolio value by 15% in her first quarter. Victoria had launched her own consulting firm, finally, her own thing, and it was thriving. You know, Victoria said over dessert, I used to think inheritance was about money. And now? I asked. She smiled, genuinely. Now I think it's about what you build with the people you choose to stay close to. Eleanor raised her glass. To Diana, for saving us from ourselves. I raised my water glass, still me. To family, the kind you build, not just the kind you're born into. As we toasted, I looked around the table at the people who'd once dismissed me, who now saw me clearly, who had learned what I already knew. That real success isn't something you're given. It's something you create, quietly, deliberately, and sometimes entirely alone. And sometimes, if you're lucky, that success becomes more than just wealth. It becomes a foundation for something far more powerful. A family built not on legacy, but on truth.